Well, good morning, everybody. It's not often I start a forecast video looking directly at soil moisture, but this is one map that changed considerably over the last week. What you've got here is 100 centimeter soil moisture data that is being modeled. This is not observed, this is modeled by NASA. So there's going to be some inconsistencies with what is measured because, as I've mentioned several times, soil moisture is one of the most complicated and then therefore least measured weather variables that we have. But my point behind showing you this is just to see the dramatic increases in soil moisture content, even down to 40 inches that we saw just from last week's worth of rain. I'm thinking a lot about these regions right in through here where we're now getting, of course, a lot of flooding. Now, also looking at this same way, take a look, parts of northeastern Iowa. Even though there was a lot of severe weather right in through this part of Nebraska and Iowa, which we'll take a look at in a few seconds, still the moisture that came through those fast-moving storms did not soak as it did just a bit farther to the east. And then take a look at central Kansas, an area we've focused a lot on in the last several weeks, is just continuing to get missed by important rains, and they're still showing up as having been missed by the most recent system. Parts of the confluence of the Ohio and the Mississippi River are also been left out of this. There's drier pockets in North Carolina and in Florida. And again, just to get a broad brush stroke of what rainfall has looked like this month, let's just go here. This is precipitation ranks, total precipitation ranks by climate district since the start of April. And again, just one side of Kansas to the other, you go from, third driest in this climate reporting district on record going back to 1893. And then you get over into parts of Missouri and we're having a top 10 wettest. And remember, most of April was dry in this area. Big chunks of this area were very, very dry. So a lot of this just came in as of late. A lot of the Corn Belt has kind of been just shut down in terms of making progress, although we saw some drier conditions over the last week in the eastern Corn Belt. And much of the rest of the Corn Belt saw too much severe weather and also too much rainfall to get going. But again, you can see this area and parts of the Mid-South stretching across Tennessee, getting over to the Carolinas here, and Virginia, that continue to show quite dry as well. The Pacific Northwest, given the flow pattern that's setting up soon, is going to continue to see more precipitation. There's possibly some better rains coming into parts of Montana that would accompany the already wild ride they've been on in terms of temperatures. But this is it. This is kind of what April has given us so far. Now, I'm working this week on a huge project, so my new long-range updates are going to be coming a little bit slower than I'd like to, just because I have to dedicate the time to this project. But I'm trying to find the April historically that looks something like this, because this is such a unique weather pattern. And as I find it, I'll let you know. Okay, so I want you to know that I'm working on that. All right, how about just a look at the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation through early this morning. And you know that for the past couple of weeks, we've been focusing in on this multi-model analysis. The artificial intelligence, in my opinion, was the first to really pick up on the magnitude and placement. But again, we can see the extremely heavy rains that did fall through this area. Some places easily topping 6 to 8 inches of total rainfall in the last 7 days alone. Southeast up the East Coast, we knew it was going to be relatively dry. Parts of the Ohio Valley, we're going to miss this as well, but quite wet in northern Indiana, getting into parts of Michigan, coming out of Illinois to Wisconsin, then stretching back into the western Corn Belt, quite wet. Again, this has been a feature we've been paying close attention to for weeks now, and it is just this idea that because of the nature of the wind pattern, we have seen the dry slot in each one of these systems press farther into central Kansas than is typical. We can sometimes get really good storms that come back into this area in April and into May. And even though the longer range models continue to focus in on the chances for storms here, as the kind of the day of the storm approaches, we continue to see this push east. And it's just a major concern for us as we go forward in this area. All right, given that, let's just break it down really quickly here into the last 72 hours. This is when most of our severe weather hit this past weekend. And we're looking here at just total rainfall. And I wanted to take a close look at a couple of different regions. So we're just going to take a zoom in here on the north central part of the United States, kind of the Midwest region. And I just wanted to provide you with some context, some overlaid numbers, because I know my color bar can be a bit challenging to look at. So I got this huge suite of maps I'm so close to getting finished to send to you all that are going to agweather.com. And just wanted to kind of give you a glimpse of what those look like. Showed them to you a little while ago. But this is the south central United States through 6 a.m. this morning. So again, just hopefully some useful views here of what the precipitation has been. In terms of all that water, it's got to get into the river system, and I went to water.noaa.gov and clicked off on everything that's not, in an action, minor, moderate, or major flood stage. So you could just see those rivers that are right now, approaching or in those flood stages, and it's pretty representative of where that really, really wet weather was. But interestingly enough, a lot of the really wet conditions from this past week were on the western side of the Mississippi River. And a lot of what contributes to the lower Mississippi Valley, of course, we keep looking in at Memphis, is the water that comes in from the Ohio. And as you saw, a lot of the Ohio River did not get much precipitation over this last week. And as a result, you can see here that the Mississippi at Memphis is actually, dipping down. I imagine this is going to make the turn back up when some of this water gets into place, plus the next 10 days that we're about to look at is going to continue to hit the Mississippi basin, I think more on its western side than its eastern side. But one thing's for sure, the river is no longer kind of in the perils of drought that it has been in, so much so over the last couple of years. All right, let's get to the severe weather side of this. This is a 3-day map of maximum estimated hail size. It's a radar-derived product. It comes from the MRMS, and which is a product that NOAA creates. And again, this just shows us that this past week in severe weather, while we may only have had, I say may only, have had 663 total reports, where the hail did come through the country, it did a tremendous amount of damage, and some of this hail was quite large. If you kind of match it up on my color bar over here, we did have several 2 to 3 inch hailstones that were falling out of these storms. But when you add up this past weekend, yes, 663 total reports, but in terms of tornadoes, just take a look at this. There was 168 of them. So this would have been on the 27th. We had 42 on the 27th. This would have been on the 26th. This was our biggest day. 113 reports right now. They need to be filtered, but 113 total reports as of what we've got here early on Monday morning. This would rank this as one of the busiest days in U.S. history in terms of tornadic activity. And you probably saw a lot of the imagery and video of the tornadoes that went through not just some of the best farm country in the world here, but also right through like Omaha and some bigger metropolitan areas. Let's go back a couple more days here. This was on the 25th. And you got to go back all the way to the 24th before we didn't have any reports. So that was a very active 4-day stretch there in total. Now, that's not to ignore the backside of this. We saw big snows that came through parts of the Rocky Mountains, including right here on the Front Range. And we even saw some snow getting out into parts of Nebraska behind this system. But on the severe side of this, I do want to just tell you, Andrew Pritchard's a colleague of mine. I have his permission to show you his Twitter page here. And I hired Andrew for this reason. He's an outstanding meteorologist. I don't know of a better short-term high-impact meteorologist. That's why I went and grabbed him and wanted him to work with me. I have so much to learn from him and his experiences here. But while he was out checking on a lot of Nutrien's facilities while he was taking this weekend to go observe these storms in the plains, you can see that he ran into some very interesting stuff here. This was in Defiance, Iowa, some of the tornado damage. And if you go to Andrew's Twitter page, it's Sky Drama is his Twitter handle. It does have some incredible videos of what some of these tornadoes look like. For example, this is the one that was in Minden, Iowa, part of a cluster of storms. The ones that went through Omaha were also included in this as well. So great information and data here. I just wanted to show you that. Okay, so where does that put us? That brought tornado numbers right back to historical averages. So this one day, you can see this spike way up here in terms of daily count. These are filtered counts, by the way. So we're back on average for tornadoes. We're still running a little bit behind by about 250 hail reports compared to historical averages. But in terms of wind, we're still above normal. So we're just going to kind of keep checking in on these metrics that give us an idea about where this severe weather season is going. So this morning, as the sun was trying to rise here in the central part of the United States, we can see what's left of this large storm system and the bigger storms that still are ripping through parts of the lower Mississippi River Valley. But taking you back to yesterday, there was one thing I found quite fascinating about this animation as we watched this low finally curl its way up and start to work its way toward the Great Lakes and eventually into Ontario. While a lot of us were focusing on the huge storm clusters last night that were pretty far to the south, it is interesting to note that as the sun was setting, Take a look at the haze and the smoke that is here in this part of the Bay of Campeche getting into the Gulf of Mexico. And if you remember last week, we showed this issue with drier air here, that drier air in Mexico, and how for most of April it had been kind of advected or moved into this direction. We saw those low humidities. And it is just neat to see the presence of that haze and smoke. A lot of this coming from wildfires that are in Mexico that continue to burn. Can you see as I kind of get to the end of this, see the wildfires here in Mexico? Just another stressor on this upcoming season as to where drought currently sits. But as we get through this morning, broad shield of clouds wrapping through here. It's going to push this precip east, and we'll keep a close eye on where it's going to go. I do want to show you the latest radar data because there is a pretty active bunch of storms that are rolling out of Texas into Louisiana early this morning. There's the main front way on the back side of it here. But on the calm ahead of this cyclone up here in parts of the Dakotas, I was checking on the OBS this morning, and here we go. We've got a few places that are getting some snow early this morning, right at freezing. Dew point temperatures, certainly well below freezing, meaning that we'll get snow out of this. And while the low's curling up here, just take a look at that. So North Dakota, even all the way down to this part of North Dakota, still picking up some snow early this morning. But just a quick look at the lightning data this morning. Very active storms that are down here coming through parts of Texas into Louisiana, and the storms that were a bit farther to the north have died out a bit. Okay, all hazards weather map. So we've got fog on the backside of this, flooding, large area flooding here, flood watches to the south. We do have a frost advisory on the backside of this here. And then coming into the Pacific Northwest, take a look at the winter weather advisories. And we're going to change our storm trajectory a bit. We're going to see a lot of storm systems coming through the country and doing more of this in the near term rather than sliding down through California and ejecting like we saw. So this slight change in the pattern will be important to understand where the heaviest precipitation is going to be, but I don't think we're going to have trouble opening the Gulf of Mexico for more of this going forward. Today's a bit of a break. The Storm Prediction Center's got just a marginal area of strong to severe storms down here along the Gulf Coast. But as we get into it, by tomorrow, take a look. See the storm track here early this week? The trough is coming into the northwest. It's going to make this turn right here. And as it does so, this is what's going to set up our next low, a bit farther to the north, but it's going to be able to draw that moisture. In fact, let's go have a quick look at that. This is tomorrow midday. There's the low-level winds, and you can see coming out of the Gulf right into this area, which means we're going to have to keep an eye out for the severe storms tomorrow in parts of Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, and South Dakota. That is where the Storm Prediction Center's identified a region of slight risk. Then as we get into day 3, which would be the 1st of May, we're going to take a look again down here in the plains of the United States as to where we could get those storms. We're going to talk about the chances of bringing some of that moisture back farther to the west and central Kansas. Limited chances, but there is a chance that it does that. So let's grab some model data here. This is the high-res NAM playing through the middle of today. We're just going to watch one low exit. We're going to see its frontal boundary draped through this part of the eastern Corn Belt down to the mid-south as the storms clear Louisiana by midday today. As we get into tonight, and it's early Tuesday morning, we're watching the low try to just wrap itself out and lose some of its overall energy in the system because the upper level dynamics aren't lining up as well as they were earlier. That's why this system doesn't pass a massive front through the East Coast. And then as we get into tomorrow morning, this is 11 o'clock Central Time tomorrow morning, playing through the afternoon. You can see on Tuesday where the models are attempting in the evening to put down the chance for those strong to severe storms right in through here. All right. As we play this forward, take a look at how the low curls up here over parts of Alberta. We could get some snow in Alberta that could be upslope in parts of Montana as well. And as we've covered many times throughout this winter and spring season, snow in the Rocky Mountains here is below average. So to get some upslope flow into this area and to bring in some snow would be quite important to that region. But this gets you out to midday on Wednesday. Remember, on Wednesday, we're going to keep an eye farther to the south for the risk of those severe storms. But overall, this is what the next 10 days looks like. Now, I just grabbed the operational European run and I 10-day map looking at precipitation anomalies. And again, there's a little bit of that upslope, but storm systems kind of coming in and curling through like this. So where that rain shadow extends in the models, is something like that. Sorry for the squiggly line, but this is what the model is resolving in terms of that rain shadow effect. Rain's trying to return to the southeast, which has been a bit drier, But overall, along the East Coast, we're not looking at overly wet conditions in the current model runs as they stand. But what this means is, this means more delay, right? This continues to say that the Corn Belt is going to have to, I think, put pause on this growing season, starting this growing season, while we let this rain get through. And this means more flooding for a big section here of this part of the country. So the upper level pattern, you'll see it. Just watch. You'll see troughs sliding through the country like this. So this is today. There's the trough sneaking right across the U.S.-Canada border, dipping down here. Watch the next one. This is by Friday coming into the Pacific Northwest. Another one follows it on Monday and sneaks across. But then as you get out there to about May 9th, I just want to make a point here. So we saw multiple troughs doing this, right? They're kind of coming across the country like that. But as you get here toward May 9th, remember this flow is doing something like this in the ensembles with the trough off the coast. Remember last week what we talked about, though? The artificial intelligence forecasting system doesn't do that. It's got this trough much closer to the Great Lakes. Now, I went through and I looked at all of the forecast data from the artificial intelligence, which is one of the only models that's kind of dropping this deeper trough in the Great Lakes. And it did it all last week for this time period, and it's doing it now. I wish you could see me. I'm kind of pointing at the screen to make my emphasis here with my hands. But the idea here is that I've been worried about this as being a thing that could bring in a frost event here in these states once we get out here to the mornings of like the 8th and the 9th of May. And the models are not calling for it. They're getting some cool temperatures in there, but the AIFS isn't either. I just wanted to bring that point to you. As we get out there farther, though, let's go back to the ensemble. Once I get out here to mid-May, there is something important to just kind of notice in this pattern. If we get past the month and the beginning of the month and start to develop some flow that comes across the country in this direction, that is a drier signal. And if we can get that, past the first 7, 8, 9 days of May, get flow coming out of the northwest in spring. Now, in summer it's different, but in spring, then this could help to give us a drier go of it once we get toward the middle of the month. All right, for those people that need to see some drier weather. Okay, how about our 5 model run through? Next 7 days. This is the AIFS forecasting system. And take note again of where the heaviest rains are expected. Now remember, these are 0Z runs. So they were initiated last night at 7 p.m. Central Time. So some of this rain is already going on this morning, okay? But again, we see this wet corridor here with storms entering the Pacific Northwest. Great news about this. This could hit the Canadian prairie with much needed rainfall. Let's go take a look at another model. This is the national blend of models. That hard contour is at 1/2 inch. Okay, I just kind of put a hard contour at 1/2 inch. Again, I'm looking for that western edge. We're looking for the wettest conditions. Again, this is a 0Z run, so that's why it's so wet down here. It's including some of this morning's rainfall. Let's then go over to the WPC. Now take note, the WPC is a 12Z run, so notice how it's not as wet in this area, but it continues to show what's on the back side of this, the next couple systems that roll through and their trajectory across the country. And finally, the last 2 models, this would be the 0Z European model, and this would be the 0Z GFS. So I love this 5 model blend. We're going to figure out a way to display all of this and compare the models, and that's what I'm working on. I'm working on getting everything on the same grid so we can do that. I think it's going to offer a lot of information. But the reality of it is, if you use just the ensembles and say probabilities, what's the chance of getting over 1 inch? This is what I've got for the next 7 days. And if we keep stepping this up, there's the chance at 2 inches. And if we just drag this on out to a 10-day forecast, there you go. Now remember, this includes this morning, but that's the chance at 2 inches. Here's the chance at 1 inch over the next 10 days. So we're going to be active through the beginning of April, through this big section of the U.S. and Canada, and including the Northwest in that discussion. And the drier side of it, this will be the big question for me. Here and here. How far to the how far to the east does the dry line extend? And are we going to actually be bringing some better precipitation to these drier spots in parts of the southeast, especially North Carolina, Virginia? All right, compare the models real quick. GFS left, European right. Just to let you know, the GFS skill scores have fallen off over the last couple of days. Let's get through Tuesday into Wednesday, where we've already seen with the high-res models. So here we go. This would be Wednesday evening, the risk of those severe storms in this area. in both models. Look at the snow wrapping around. That's that upslope I talked to you about coming in to parts of Montana. It's in both models as well. Our next trough comes into the northwest. It's here. This is Thursday afternoon and evening as that system curls up toward Ontario by late this week. So this is your next chance of getting some rainfall to be coming through this area. It's mid to late this week. As we then watch after that, that low curls up toward the Hudson Bay by this weekend, but the models really start to diverge in where they think the next couple systems are going to go by already this time next week. So there's some loss in model consistency out that far. But overall, that next week was pretty consistent between the 5 model comparison. We just got a quick look of it here using the models between the GFS and the European, their comparison. Okay, I do want to let you know about the snow, though, because it will be cold enough to bring in some of this. This is the chance of grabbing an inch over the next 10 days. So we can kind of see here across the Canadian prairie, getting into this part of northern Minnesota, Ontario, coming out of Manitoba, and some of this was this morning. All right. Week 2. You can see that the models are hung up on this. See it? All 3 of them giving this wetter northern tier of the United States storm track. And I buy into it because I just saw it in both the AIFS and the European ensemble, but the week 2 forecasts are shaping up something to look like this. All right. From here, let's talk temperatures. This is our frost potential over the next 7 days. Now remember, this does not get us out there to that May 8th, 9th, where we could see some cooler conditions in this area, but over the next 7 days, most of our coldest air is here, tucked away, coming out of the Canadian prairie into the western United States. Just to kind of give you a different view of that, this is the next 5 days according to the European model looking at temperature anomalies. So some places here are going to be 10 to 15 degrees colder than average over the next 5 days throughout parts of the Canadian prairie, getting to the northern plains and northwest United States. On the flip side of that, come over here to the Great Lakes, and much of the next 5 days is 10 to 15 degrees above normal. So you can really tell what this pattern's doing. Let's take a quick look at those min temperatures and try to find the white line in this so you can identify where that frost threat is going to be. So there's Tuesday morning, again, throughout the northwest, here and in Maine. This is now Wednesday morning. Again, another frosty morning into this area in parts of the Pacific Northwest. That's Thursday morning. I'm watching for it again here. Friday, quite a bit of cold air coming in. Saturday, again, blast of cold air following this system. And there's Sunday. So pretty cold compared to average across the northern tier of the United States. High temperatures. Here's today's highs. Getting into Tuesday, 90 down here in parts of Kansas, 54 in North Dakota. So we've got almost a 40-degree swing in temperatures or spread in temperatures just throughout the plains right now. This will be Wednesday. Getting into Thursday, cold front swiping through behind this system. There's Friday, getting into Saturday and Sunday. So just a quick look there. Stretching it out a bit, this is day 5 through 10 from the GFS and day 10 through 15 from the GFS. But as we've seen, the European model has been warmer. So while it keeps the West cool, day 5 through 10, day 10 through 15 is a bit more mild across a broader section of the country than the GFS is. All right, where's this all going? This was released on Friday. This would be the May 11th through the 24th outlook from the CPC. And honestly, they didn't change this idea too much away from their May forecast. So will we truly get drier here? And is it possible? Is it possible to get wet in this area? Like really above average precipitation in an area that I am very concerned about for drought development for the rest of the year. Let's take a look at it another way. European model, this is what it's got. We're going to do a 1 week sliding window from May 11th through the 24th to kind of match what you saw there. So the European model is wet in the northwest. Again, this is the 7 days ending on May 11th. And drier in through this area. That's that possible open window. And then as we just slide this forward, this gets us out there to the 24th. I mean, there is a bit of a wetter signal here, but every time we've seen this wet signal show up, it really needs to be carved, right? We just haven't been able to see moisture return back to this area. So I'll do this. Let's look at a 30-day outlook, and let's just go through the first week of June. So that gets us away from the really wet next 7 days and tries to see what's going on beyond that. So I see wetter in the northern plains, stormy still through the central U.S., a little bit drier signal here, which kind of matches our analogs. Could we be wetter in the northeast? Well, they've been drier as of late, so a little bit of moisture there wouldn't necessarily be a problem. So given that, let's start to wrap this video up. Something is finally moving to give us some sort of a different look, and it's the MJO. You can see it's popped out in phase 3, and it's expected to kind of make the turn pretty quickly here. This is a fast progression of the MJO. Normally, it can take up to 6 weeks to complete the phase diagram. It's going to go in the next 2 weeks, over half of it. So this is a bit faster than normal, which makes us wonder if there's some convection that's being coupled in with this forecast. But what I see is the MJO streaking across like that. And that's at least going to give us a different look. And if we do end up at some point in MJO phase 7, we could get this flow. And what's important about this flow in the month of May is that we start to build some heat in the west. Yes, this makes things pretty inclement for the northwest, I think, into British Columbia. In the central United States, though, northwest flow in May is drier. And while I'm not worried about this for cold, it's the right trajectory to get us to slow down a bit with these systems. But I still think we're 10 days away, maybe more than that, from seeing something like this develop. What needs to be watched is how long this lasts. And does this continue to cool off the ocean temperatures underneath it, which is a signal we have to watch for the risk of summer heat and drought in the midsection of the country. So just keep that in mind as we start to have this discussion. All right, let's give you a new update on El Nino. You can see here that in the last few days, this ribbon of colder water has emerged. We still have part of our negative PDO signal and negative PMM, plus our Atlantic ocean temperature still very hot, supportive of that very active hurricane season. Looking recently at years where we started to see this, I want to show you a couple of those. What do I have here? Oh, first of all, just to let you see this, the ocean temperatures are now below 0.5, which would technically put this into neutral territory, although we know the trade winds have backed off significantly. But if we come back here, a couple of years we've been looking at, like 2020, very strong negative PMM signal, but we were starting just to see that little ribbon showing up in this area as well. In 2016, kind of our last mega El Nino that came down, we had the little ribbon showing up here, but this is very different from this year. So you can see that's what the ocean temperatures were on April 27th, 2016, and this is what they look like now. So again, very difficult to find a good, strong analog, I think, to the 2024 start of spring through early summer. We'll keep working on it as we refine these longer range ideas. What I want to finish with is this, just looking back over the last couple of weeks at satellite estimated rainfall in South America. And what I would like to point out is we've been extremely wet over parts of southern Brazil getting into Argentina. We've been very dry over these eastern growing areas here, including Minas Gerais, parts of Goiás, Tocantins. But take note, this kind of extends into Mato Grosso do Sul as well. Why I point that out is that over the next 10 days, very warm signal coming into parts of southern Brazil. Although Argentina, if you just take a look down here, I don't see the risk of a frost getting into major growing areas, but pretty cold in the near term. But what I'd like to show you is what the next 10 days of precip look like from the European. So we continue to see that same pattern evolving. We just play this out, not a whole lot of reason to call for rain across major Safrinha growing areas. Now, we talked about this last week. We expect the monsoon to slow down this time of year, but I think this is a bit of an early exit. And the evidence for that would just be to compare it to average. You can see that this is a much drier signal here while flooding continues to the south. We just need to see the impact of what this is going to do to that crop as we start to get this crop in the United States fully established. All right, that's all I got for you today. We'll look forward to talking to you tomorrow morning. Thanks.